Hello, Internet. I finally have my computer back, more or less. So that's done. I'm very happy, and before anything else, because it's been a minute, I want to talk about some more general things, a little bit of housekeeping, and do anything but really review this week's comics. First up, Mellow Modesty, I think it was 2 weeks back now, didn't just mention me in his videos, he called me out and said I needed to read Godzilla the Half-Century War. I am, and I have, and I will talk about it before it is completed. However, I don't want to talk about it this video because I want to do something a little different with it, but just know that I have, and I will talk about it, but it deserves something separate from what I'm doing tonight. The other big video, and I apologize about this, I had my contest video and I was planning on going through it quickly, and then my computer died, and so I was not able to get to it quickly. I am still waiting to read one of those issues because one of them has to be obtained somehow because the normal methods aren't working. So I will go through that, and I wanted to address what a lot of people were talking about with the spectacle of comics, maybe go through a few things. And so that's going to be a bit of a longer video, and so I want to give that the time it deserves, and if I did it right now, it would be too much of a rush. So I plan on doing that soon. But again, it's going to be a minute longer, and I apologize. But the prize wasn't too high, so the winner, I hope, will take it graciously, and I hope you'll be interested in what I'm talking about nonetheless. And there's another video I plan on doing, not to promise too much all at once, but I wanted to talk, because it's a subject you all know I like to talk about, a bit on the pricing of comics, now that I've had a chance to play with digital and a couple other things. And there's some points I wanted to bring up that I think would be good if people were a bit more conscious of when they're going in and buying comics. And I heard some comic news today from the last place I ever want to hear it from again, and that was NPR, Morning Edition. Clark Kent is quitting his job at the Daily Planet. What is going on? It took my mind through a loop. But I don't know what the hell they were talking about, if they meant the comics or something else, so I had to go look it up. And yes, Clark Kent is quitting the Daily Planet in this upcoming Scott Lobdell Hell on Earth crossover between Superman, Supergirl, and Superboy, which sounds interesting. Glad that action isn't in there. And I'd be curious to try to read it, but that's something that can be wait for a trade if I hear good things post initial whatever. And I have to say, it caught me as interesting because the point of him quitting the Daily Planet is to make a point about where journalism stands in today's world, which is a subject I am actually very fascinated with, and is something that comics have definitely tackled before, and I would love to see them tackled again. There's a whole contingent of Marvel comics from kind of the early 2000s and mid-late 90s with Daily Bugle miniseries. There was the Pulse that led out of Alias that was also part of this, and little specs here and there, and of course the Frontline tie-ins to a few of the mega events, which is something they dropped, which I'm upset about because that was one thing that I found very fascinating that Marvel was doing for a while, and when they killed that, I mean, the whole idea of AVX with the Frontline thing would have been more interesting than anything that actually happened in AVX. So I'm sad about that, but this idea of them addressing media. Also, the Nightly News, the best thing Jonathan Hickman has ever written, certainly, is a miniseries worth checking out. It's published through Image. I'm sure you can get it for relatively cheap. I don't know, because I own it, so I don't care what it costs anymore. But as interesting as this topic is, and I think Superman actually being a great character to tackle it, because, I mean, despite it all, I mean, yeah, it's Superman, the first of everything. I mean, there's not too many superheroes that do currently hold the journalistic dual job identity. So it would be nice to see. And that is another reason why I love Spider-Man for so long, and even without it, I still like the character, but yeah. So I'm curious about that, but I really doubt that Superman is going to tackle this too much. It's going to be too much on this big event, and I can just see this media coverage thing being an interesting, like, C-plot, but it's not going to really be the focus of the comic, and so the only part that I'm really curious about is something that I know is going to be kind of maligned by whatever superheroism is going on, and I actually care less about it. And if they wrote in a way where you're getting the media and, like, seeing perspectives and biases through this, you know, super fight event thing that was going on, that sounds like it's not going to be that complicated, and it's a Superman story, so we all know how it's basically going to go. Big alien threat comes in, Superman's all raw and deals with it and needs help from the super family, I guess, because I'm assuming more quantity than quality in fighters, though they can hurt him, but it's Superman, so meh. So it'd be interesting to take. But you also have the younger Clark Kent, so chances are he might be a bit more impudent than before, so meh. Another thing is that Marvel is quickly losing some interest with me. Through this whole AVX thing, all the merging of Avengers into everything else really is killing my love for the company at large, because I've never really had any love for the Avengers, and with them bleeding into all the X-Men titles, it makes me just not really care about the X-Men titles. And with everything jumping up to $3.99 or being $2.99 books that I just can't care about, and also hearing some other things that's clearly more of a stunt, and I really feel that part of it is some sort of greater company-wide thing to try to brand everything under one name, that if they do so for so many years, they get the rights to everything again, and then it can all be under one umbrella, and it stinks of corporate and editorial rather than any actual writing coming through it. Not to say that there aren't good stories that could be told, and I bet there will be. I just think waiting half a year for the editorial mandate to simmer down and let the writers and artists actually, you know, do what they do would be smart, and, you know, let the cream float to the top. So I'm curious about that. And also, because I want to divorce my review of The Amazing Spider-Man that came out this week from this, a lot of people have messaged me, and thank you for talking to me about it, but yes, it's true, The Amazing Spider-Man is ending with the 100 whatever issue, and something's happening with Peter Parker. They seem to be alluding to that a lot more in a way, you know, I was reading it like, you know, something's gonna happen, whatever, it's comics, you know, of course something's gonna happen, but it's not really gonna matter, is it? Looks like it will probably matter for about a year, because the Amazing Spider-Man title is being dropped, and then the Superior Spider-Man is coming in. Supposedly the Superior Spider-Man is not Peter Parker, it is someone else. And whereas creatively and all that, like, I get the idea. But as many people have pointed out, we have the Venom book, which is a dark take on Spider-Man. We have the Scarlet Spider, which is the 90s throwback take on Spider-Man with the clone, so he's more violent and all that. And we also have Miles Morales in the Ultimate Universe being Spider-Man. And now it's not Peter Parker as the main Spider-Man, which kills me. They're already having their cake and eating it too. And there's few characters that I am more attached to than Peter Parker. And it's not so much that it's not him, but they have all this not him already, and I'm actually enjoying it for the view, but they pull out Peter Parker, it pulls out my interest not only in that book, potentially. I'll see how it's written. And I don't want to cast judgments on a book I haven't read, but I do have to say the way they're handling the hype and the way they're handling the advertising of this move has been piss poor. Dan Slott made a big deal about it, and then because we have such enlightened and adult fans amongst our community, not our YouTube community, but the greater comic community at large, a lot of them were issuing death threats, whether it was a joke or kind of half-hearted. It was a lot of hate towards Dan Slott for killing Peter Parker, blah, blah, blah. Now, first off, people, it's comics. Peter Parker will be back in a year, probably. So, whatever. But the fact that people are so immature sucks. The fact that Dan Slott then retweeted and made a big joke of it and did this whole thing, I get it. But it wasn't even like he was cherry-picking the creative or good ones. It was just, if he got something, he was just retweeting, and it made sense because it creates a fervor and all that, but it also kind of shows that they're trying to get, no such thing as bad publicity, right? And they're doing this whole thing, and the whole thing stinks of, again, editorial movements and something for shock value rather than any real creative juice. And maybe I'm wrong. But I have a lot of bad feeling towards it, and I want to like the book, maybe, but on the other hand, it's going to be $3.99 twice a month, and if I'm able to drop it, it would kind of open some doors. And if I drop Spider-Man, I will drop Venom, I will drop Scarlet Spider, I'm pretty sure, because my chain to that whole franchise, if you will, kind of crumbles without the keystone. And so I'm sure I can't be the only one harboring these feelings, and I'm not trying to work into a fervor, because I've worked myself into a fervor before. First was Spider-Man, when many people did a la One More Day. And I put that down, and I said, I am never reading Spider-Man again. I was very upset with it, and I was like, fuck this. And they've ruined every Spider-Man comic, never be good again. Then I went back and read it, and I liked it. It was all good. Also, reminds me of with the DC 52. And that will bring me to my next point, a la me not being so hot on Marvel right now. So, in light of Marvel not being something I'm so keen on right now, I'm jumping more over to DC as a natural response, but I realized that I was looking at a lot of these books in the wrong light. And when I did my 52 review, I was bogged down by the amount of material I was reading. Mediocre books became worse to me. Good books were cut down because I couldn't read them with the rigor that they deserved. And I'm looking back now, and I'm realizing some of the mistakes I made and my judgments, and I've gained some perspective. I'm realizing that I can't look at these books sheerly for how I want the characters to be all the time. I realize that I cannot always have the character version that I read and loved once upon a time. They will never be that way. Again, because I've been looking a bit more at comic history and realizing more, looking through my personal comic history even, that there are iterations of characters. And they shift so wildly sometimes that when even they return to more an understanding of that character, it's never exactly the same. No character is going to be exactly the way you want them after you've read them that way once. They can't ever go back that way fully again. It would be too repetitive in some people's eyes. It would be too this, that, or the other thing. And it's a new creative staff. It's a new day. It's a new time. And it's never going to be exactly that way. The biggest character that made me look at this a little differently was really recommended to me by Sleepy Reader, Minutia Minute, and a few others. I've gone back and I've reread most of Wonder Woman. I still have issues 12 and 13 to read, but I've read the rest. And that book is really good, and I'm enjoying it. However, there's a lot of resentment. I held that for it because that Wonder Woman, that version of Wonder Woman, is a lot more violent and a lot more held to Greek tragedy, which makes sense, but it doesn't encapsulate a lot of what the character used to represent on a lot of levels for people who loved Wonder Woman. And I've seen this, as I've said before, when I saw Phil Jimenez talk about it. Also, a fellow YouTuber, Raptorfest, talked about this at length and brought up a lot of good points regarding it. And they are all still completely valid. However, reading a little further, I am seeing the love of Wonder Woman is still there, though not as strong as it once was, and that was held up very well in one issue in particular. And seeing more of that book is really changing my tune, and so I'm going back and I'm picking out the ones that I want to try again. And just for full disclosure, the books I'm looking at trying again, I'm going to read up to a certain point, kind of depending on availability / really how much I want to try these books again. Include Stormwatch, Justice League Dark, Red Hood and the Outlaws. I want to mention that really quickly. I outcried that book for the kind of sexist stance it took, which is one issue and one art bit, and on one hand, yeah, I still see where I was coming from on that. On the other hand, decrying boobs and sexy girls, yeah. Depends what day you catch me on, but I just cannot stay mad at someone for that sort of thing, really. Like, I still agree with my points, but at the same time, yeah, I'm willing to see where that book went, and it seems to have a sci-fi edge, and it's a small team book, and I want to take another look. Also, the art in it, those panels aside, the general drawing was pretty interesting and very bright, vibrant colors, and want to take a look at that book again. Then also Batgirl. I knew this was going to happen. It's Gail Simone, and I can't not. And seeing the way that she wrote villains in that one Batgirl issue that was part of Soul Joker event, I can't not. I also want to take a look at Nightwing. And so I think that pretty much wraps it up. So I'm definitely going to be getting Wonder Woman. I'm going to be looking at these books, trying out. Oh, the other one was I, Vampire. I gave away the first 3 issues, so I don't have any of those to read anymore because I was trying to get someone else in the comics and she liked them. She likes vampires, so I was trying. I don't think it really worked, but trying to get someone into comics, so it was worth the risk. But so I guess I should look at the trade, but I had to buy a couple issues because there was a Justice League Dark crossover. So I'm not sure I'm going to go about rereading that, I guess. Also, I don't know. No, Donnelly loves that book, but clearly our tastes do not match half the time. And beyond DC and Marvel, I'm just going to bring this up. I do want to look at Valiant books. There's a lot of reasons I want to look at that, and I think something outside the big two that's trying to do that, I think that's a very valiant effort. I didn't even mean to do that. But oh my god, I read the first 2 issues of Harbinger, and I've flipped through a lot of the books. The art in every Valiant book is cringeworthy in one way or another. And that kills me. And I try it out, but if the art's cringeworthy and it's $3.99, really, I can't justify that. So I might look at trades or something when it can be cheaper, but God, that's rough. And to make all your books $3.99, that's kudos to them, I guess, but boy. And Image is coming out with a lot of stuff. Dark Horse seems to be pushing right now, which makes sense because they have a lot of horror stuff. So does IDW, so this is kind of the season. So highly recommend you all to kind of maybe check a little more of that stuff out now, because it seems interesting. Also on that end, Quantum and Woody just hit digital. That was something from Acclaim Comics back in the day. Christopher Priest wrote. I don't have all the issues, but it's all very good and very in Priest style. There's a good chance Battle Chasers might have new issues out soon. That is huge for those of you who don't know. Heard a while back Fell's supposed to have some new issues, but I'm still waiting on that. And yeah, there's just a lot of stuff coming out that I think it's time. You know, Marvel and DC took a hit for all of us. So, comic reviews. Who does those, right? As I mentioned kind of before, it's kind of interesting that I'm trying to make this move to DC. This was a very Marvel-centric week, and it really pointed to a few things. First up, The Amazing Spider-Man. We're in part 2 of this cataclysmic ending, and we get this Hobgoblin fight, which is great, and that's clearly on the cover. And there's a lot there that plays into something that happened at the very start of Slott's arc, where you see the original Hobgoblin really kind of decry his family member that was struck down because he was a jerk, and that's pretty damn funny. But amidst all this, Peter Parker's held hostage, and it's supposed to be Spider-Man that's going to come save him. But, at least for a few more months, that's still a problem. And, we have Max, Peter's boss, actually go and make the delivery, and has a few tricks up his sleeve. And we see Max stand face to face with the Kingpin, and a little nervous, but holds his own. And it's really refreshing to have that kind of character moment there, because especially in like an Avengers book or Justice League or something, you have all these superheroes that just, you know, life and death situations and whatever, but you have this scientist come there, and he has a plan. He's not incompetent, but he's nervous, and he's scared out of his brain, and probably not even acting the best he could, but he's trying to be smart and do the whole nine, but he's just a guy. And it was really nice to see that. And you see a little bit about Peter, and you see Peter kind of hiding his identity while actually slowly sussing out the situation. But he can't go full Spider first in the book, because there's still this device that's setting off his spider sense and to the nth degree, and he just has essentially like the worst migraine ever and just can't function. And then also, I mean, trying to keep that secret identity, and so he can't do everything. And it was a great play, and it was a great issue, and it reminded me how much I love this book. And a huge reason why I love the book is Peter Parker, because Spider-Man is completely absent throughout this entire issue. So there was that, and it was just a great read. However, if you have not been reading Spider-Man, in no way would I recommend this last arc to you, because it's kind of a victory lap, and there's just a lot of the little things going on, I think, would just be completely missed by someone who's unfamiliar. And so, the swan song shall sing for a few more months, but that will be all, folks. Next, there is a review of a comic so terrible, so horrendous. It not only nearly killed this reviewer's faith in a character, in a brand, the very state of comics. It actually killed the creator's run on the book. Deadpool. Dun dun dun. Reading this comic is like reading bile in your hands. Taking characters that someone could beloved, someone could have assigned meaning to, had philosophical thoughts about, and they became nothing less than caricatures, but instead tools for something less than even simple narrative? No, it couldn't. But it is. It is. Slayback? A character admittedly not too important, is just a punchline for a joke that isn't funny. And T-Ray, a fairly not noble but important, grandiose character, brought down to nothing, acting in a way that doesn't even fit the loosest definition of what a character is. No. And Deadpool is not Deadpool, and the entire crux of the arc, this character's very mortality, is just not just conveniently explained away when a villain from the past just returns because mortifying. In the art, the only saving grace that's been of this title for its entire run, shameful lines haphazardly put in, anatomy thrown to the wind. No, it doesn't get worse than this. No. And at the end, a note from the Daniel Way. Oh my god. Claiming he lost his sanity writing this book. Just doing things to see if people would keep reading. And claiming that the character was at an all-time low for popularity, when at the height of this trade people were never more excited for a book. Cable and Deadpool was finally getting the recognition it deserved right before it was cancelled because people were buying it in trades. And he was a video game character. And had an appearance in a movie. No. No. Lies held through every moment of it. We'll see what happens next. But whatever happens next with Deadpool, it has to be better than this. Gambit. If you can read a comic quicker than this, I'd be shocked. A word balloon's broken down across panels for no good reason. This is read so quick it was almost not even worth looking through. Flipping through the book, you'd get a sense for about 90% of it. Yeah, this is one issue to pick itself up, otherwise it's getting dumped fast, because It's like missing a gasp of air. Completely forgettable. Next up, I want to talk about The Flash, because I was down on this book for a little bit. The annual hit me wrong because it just kind of jumped around and didn't really tell a story and left some holes that weren't just questions, but just plot holes for the story in the short term. And then we had the Zero issue, which was just bad. It was just bad. Conceptually, just everything but the actual lines itself was bad in that issue. So, here we go. Issue 13, picking up on our main story. And we have this little flashback talking about, Flash and his family from back when. And this is more of the characterization you'd expect. And then we jump to the here and now. We get a little tie, a little bit of that whole, where Wally is supposed to be coming back up to him. And it's all pretty good, though. This house right here, I don't know, such a prominent frame, 2 frames spread sort of deal, and blah, I don't know. But we have this nice big opening. We have the little title worked into the foreground bit, which is a theme that they can continue as long as they want. It's always beautiful. And we get a sense what's going on. We have the rogues, realizing the stakes, letting the Flash do what the Flash does, but they do try to escape, and they end up getting sucked into it, yada yada yada. And so we find out Grodd probably has greater plans, but the Flash doesn't know what they are. And this was interesting. The Trickster gets his arm just ripped off by one of the gorillas, and I don't know. I'm curious to see if this is going to have greater ramifications, because this was an interesting little bit, and we have the characters interacting amongst themselves, not just with the main character. And that was so strong. I mean, in a way, this moment does a lot more world building than a lot of comics ever really dare to really let everything kind of interact with itself. And I don't know, this was a big moment for me. This is one of the biggest things in the 52, even though it's completely contained within this book and only will be. To just see, 2 villains fighting over each other like that, and just have that whole thing, it was huge, and also escalated, the scale of where Trickster's kind of, problem for the city. He's still trying to defend it, whatever, and then Grodd just, bam! It's just, this frame did more for me than certain entire comics have done for me for a series. Then we have this interesting little spread, but what's interesting is usually there's more thought to the medium and the layout. Here we have this fold, which is why I actually thought to do this comic reviewed like this, across this panel, and it just, the layout is not what I'm used to with the Flash, which is usually a lot more conscious and a lot more beautiful. I have this interesting bit here with him using kind of a, it's not quite a framing device, but it's across the whole thing, and we get a bit more yada yada. I don't want to spoil it, but whereas this issue wasn't the best thing ever, it really renewed my interest in the fact that these people at least know what they're doing as comic creators, despite a couple missteps. And this book's willing to go a few places that a lot of other books can't, and that's interesting. And it bears a little more note than most of your other big, flashy comics. Doo-doo-doo. What will be our pick of the week? Week. I was hoping to have something a little clever filming-wise for each of the books, but this Punisher Warzone took me aback. Now, for those who read Rucka's Punisher run, this comes from events tied out of mostly that last issue. But if you read that run, you know kind of that last issue was because of all that happened. Anyways, that run was brilliant, and this, whereas it plays off of those events, is very much its own thing at the same time. Alves is mentioned, but I don't know how the whole thing is going to go, but it's certainly in this issue, she isn't present. And I'd be kind of curious to see if she comes in again, but what's really interesting is this Punisher book is bringing up something that Marvel has danced around since the Punisher became a permanent fixture in Marvel Comics. And it's really playing with an interesting idea, because you essentially have all these vigilantes, or they were vigilantes upon day. Now they're all Avengers, which I believe puts them outside of that, because they're a la Civil War, I guess, more or less. Not registered. I mean, if you're an Avenger, I figure you're registered on some level, right? And there's enough ties, whatever, that they're not just vigilantes out on their own. But Punisher definitively isn't. He very much is the pure vigilante. More so than nearly any other character in comics, other than, well, you know, DC's vigilante. But that's... But here we see Punisher kind of laying a bit low after the events. And while he's preparing to drive off, we don't necessarily know. Spider-Man finds Frank, and the reason Spider-Man is so gung-ho at the moment is that Frank used one of his web shooters to escape the events. And the fact that something Spider-Man was used led to the deaths of innocent people was interesting. Well, it was interesting, but it's also the impetus for him to go and find Frank, because suddenly, in some way, it's personal. And also, it's apt, because, in a way, Spider-Man had a hand to play in that event, whether, I'm not sure if Spider-Man's aware of it or not, because he met Punisher and Alves when there was the whole mega crime crossover deal, and he didn't try to stop Punisher. He didn't really try to stop Alves. He made an argument towards her morality to not be working with a madman, essentially. But now the Punisher escapes, and when he escapes, he grabs another web shooter, so now he has a set. And that pisses off Spider-Man to no end, and so he goes and calls a meeting with the Avengers, or at least the core Avengers. Now, it hits me as odd, because Daredevil is not one of the characters at this meeting, but there's Captain America, Black Widow, Iron Man, and Wolverine. And Spider-Man's like, it's time, he's out of line. I mean, there's always been a line with him, and now cops are dead. They don't know that he didn't shoot the cops. They're going off the media reports, which, again, tying to something I was talking about earlier this evening, the whole idea of media perception is interesting, because Spider-Man's been on both ends of it, but this is something where, who do you believe the facts on? I mean, no one's going to believe the Punisher, right? So... And the fact is, there are people dead by a gun in an incident where the Punisher was at. It's not like Frank's completely innocent, which is part of the interesting thing about this. But either way, Spider-Man wants to bring him in. And most of the Avengers just kind of shrug it off at first. They're like, look, I don't know why you're so upset about this, whatever. The Punisher always has a line. Spider-Man brings up this event to them, which is interesting because it's actually a really good play. I mean, outside of essentially Daredevil. New York is Spider-Man's turf, basically. I mean, that's his city, which is bizarre because nearly every Marvel hero is housed in NYC. But it's really only 2 characters that are really there. And the rest just happen to be housed there, and they're kind of more characters of the world, if you will, which is bizarre. But it is, and it kind of makes sense. It's interesting, and so Spider-Man brings that to them. Another thing about this issue is it's much more Spider-Man than on the Punisher, which might be part of the reason I like it. I don't really care at this point, but and so Captain America clearly is like, you're way too hot on this, but you're right, we need to do something. He makes this stand for it. And he wants the Black Widow to try to suss Frank out, which makes sense, but it's not quite the same as the Avengers as a full force coming down on one man who's not superpowered, not threatening the world at large, and whereas, yeah, he is kind of bad, as Tony points out, not as bad, and do they want to have the full might of the Avengers come down on this one guy? And Cap's like, no. But we do need to do something about it. So there's that. And then Logan's at this whole thing that's kind of interesting, because to completely spoil the issue, so if you don't want it completely spoiled, but Wolverine goes and warns Frank. Logan goes and warns Frank, I guess, touch more aptly, about this whole thing. You can see why Wolverine isn't so okay with it. I mean, Wolverine's killed probably about as many people as the Punisher has. I mean, sure, the exact numero is probably a little different, but the morality is the same. And Wolverine's brings up the point with Cap, like, I don't see the good in people as much as you do. At a certain point, I believe, they need to die. And he clearly has some respect for Frank, and it makes sense. But I don't know, it's weird. I see why it kind of had to be Wolverine there, but what weirds me out about this is Captain America. They've brought this up a lot. Captain America's a soldier, and he's killed people. Sure, of course it was at war, there's definitely a line, but that morality is blurred a little bit. The idea of Black Widow condemning Frank makes no sense. In some ways, she's worse than he is, because he's essentially declared open season on mobsters, murderers, and rapists. Like, yeah, maybe it's a little screwed up, but it's clear and intent, and yeah. And she kind of just, she's a double, triple, whatever agent. I mean, she lies, cheats, steals, kills for her own ends, for whatever end she feels are right at the time. Like, I don't know. In some ways, that seems just as bad morally. Then I don't know. I mean, I could see where a character, like, actually, interestingly, Iron Man would be more against it, because he's more of a white knight comparatively. Spider-Man makes perfect sense, but he's had probably the most dealings with the Punisher compared to the rest of the Avengers. And then Captain America kind of just having a hard stance, not really debating both ends of it, hits me as odd, because I don't know, it's a different age thing, but also Captain America is past World War II at this point, and I don't know. But it's really interesting, because you see the Avengers, and if they condemn the Punisher, I mean, they make a point that they kind of have to, because if they don't, they're essentially stating their own take on the law, and there's that brought up. But at the same time, every one of them kind of has a tether to the morality that the Punisher pushes. And certain people are definitely more on one side than the other, as I've pointed out, but the whole idea that they're actually going to try to go after him, and not just, you know, in the heat of the moment or right when it's there, when it's convenient, but actually try to hunt him down. It raises this idea that the heroes are going after him, that he's actually being viewed more as a villain than kind of as an element. And it's an interesting take, and for this is actually a much bigger event, because it makes the event that ended the Punisher book a really big event in the Marvel Universe. Not because it's cataclysmic, not because it's global, but because essentially it's a showcase. It's a moment that is fairly big. I mean, some people died and some cops died, and it was in this big public area, and it was this huge shootout. I mean, that's kind of a big deal. In the Marvel Universe, it doesn't seem like it's as big of a deal as it is here, but whatever. But it takes that event and makes it bigger, because suddenly there's ramifications for it that will affect a lot of major players in the Marvel Universe. And for that, it's more interesting and says more about more characters in the Marvel Universe than Avengers vs. X-Men or Civil War or Secret Invasion or any of that does. It's going to be contained a lot tighter, just because it plays on a moral angle that all the characters have to deal with, while depending how hard they go after this one character that maybe in some ways they kind of consider to be one of their own, and not in a way that demonizes them any more than the character already is demonized, more than the idea of the character should be even, but playing on that idea of what the characters are, and then seeing something that's really revealed about them that won't have major ramifications forever, but will really inform readers to maybe a side of them that if they hadn't read this book, they might have not felt the same way. I just feel that's, in a lot of ways, it's bigger because it's more personal, because it is more quiet than a big global confrontation where, yeah, maybe you have to malign some of your morals for a minute because this is too big to have the option to fail a bit. The fact that you have the option to maybe say no, it says a lot more in some ways, because it feels more like a choice. So this book was huge for me, and amongst a lot of other things right now that are really maligning my love for a lot of Marvel books, it's proof that all of the publishers put out some good stuff and they put out some bad stuff, and you gotta shift with the tide for where your tastes are at the moment, for where your tastes are in general, because nearly no book is good consistently, and there's no reason for you to be picking up stuff you don't like. You gotta take chances, and you're not always gonna like things as much as you once did or you once will, but you gotta kind of go with the flow. So there's ups and downs, and there's definitely some middle, some gray areas, but sometimes things will lead you to a book like this that, a little over a year ago, I wouldn't be picking up a Punisher book, but there's a lot of reasons for me to go pick up the Punisher book, and so I'm clearly continuing this Rucker run to its end. And then I probably won't, because I can't imagine them doing anything with the Punisher that's going to be on this level, so it's going to feel not as good by comparison, but also the general Punisher book I don't have any interest in. But the idea that someone could take the character and do something like this with it shows that it's not as much the character as it is the story. So there are some videos coming up. Clearly, it's been happening more and more, and I'm really happy about it. I'm taking suggestions. and I should be more agile to respond to them quicker. Clearly my computer down kind of killed it, but yeah, I'm really excited to kind of get back in the game here for realsies. And there's another thing I'd really like to tell you guys about, but my hands are tied right now, and you who know what I mean, and it should be coming soon, guys. But yeah, glad to be back, glad to see so much. Sorry that so many of you are sick right now. I was sick a bit myself, and that's over. But yeah, always looking forward to more comic reviews, and I hope you're looking forward to more of my comic reviews as well. If you stayed this long, thank you. Please like and subscribe. But more importantly for me, it means a lot when you guys leave a comment, and more than just like, thanks, I like the video. I mean, that's nice, and I definitely appreciate it, but you know, any thoughts sparked, please. That's what I really want to hear. And truth is, anymore with the way I listen to these things, I end up listening and responding and dealing with the reviews probably more time than I actually spend reading comics. So please, yeah. And if you guys ever have a question about anything comic wise, I'm not the best resource for news all the time, but please go ahead and ask if you'd like to, and I'd like to talk with anyone who's willing about these comic things. So have a great week, and I will catch you later with more comic reviews. Bye.